Hello, everyone. I'm here with my friend today, Dr. Doni, who is the new author, or you're not a new author, but an author of a new book that we're going to talk about today, Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health. So first of all, welcome, Dr. Doni Wilson.
Thank you so much for having me, Bridget. I'm so happy to be here with you. And I was so happy when your book came out recently. And so it's like so fun to get to celebrate with you like this.
I know, it really is. Like, it's nice to, support each other. Like, it's not the easiest thing, let's be honest, to like write a book and put it out. And it's nice to be like, we have friends like kind of doing the same things, and it just kind of creates some excitement. So,
Exactly.
um, I have a like a big question to ask you like right off the bat, which is like I guess we've all heard the word stress so much in like the modern world, right? It kind of gets overused. But why is it still like so important and relevant that you, as a naturopathic physician, many years of experience, have like written a book about it, focusing on it?
And this is it. I love this question because believe me, I wake up some days and I'm like, why am I still thinking about this? Why is it? I've written two other books on this topic, and now I've written a third. This is another book on stress.
Wow.
Master your stress. And it's like, I think it's something that's been on my mind since I was a child, actually. I mean, I can remember my mom is a teacher, a special ed teacher. And so she actually used that language with me when we were going through something stressful when I was a child. She would actually say, we're stressed or you're stressed. And so I think
Mm.
in my mind, I made this connection from a young age. What is stress? How does it affect us? What can we do about it? Like it's like in my mind, and it's not going away. So I just am like, okay, well, let me just keep work at everything I learn about stress. Let me just put it out there to help others, because I mean, definitely, of course, with the pandemic the past couple years, I think we all had more awareness for the fact that we were exposed to stress with the pandemic and the infection and all of that, right? So it was
Yeah.
like, okay, this, I mean, and I, in some ways, I'm glad that it kind of made us look at our stress a little bit, because a lot of times stress is the elephant in the room. Like, it's there all the time, but we walk around it, we ignore it, we think it shouldn't be there, right? Like, it's like, but it's really the elephant in the room. As humans, we're gonna have stress. And also, as a practitioner, when I'm solving whatever health issue for patients, if I'm really looking for underlying causes, which is what I do as a naturopathic doctor, right? I'm looking for what is the root cause. And if I'm really truthfully asking that question and digging deep, with most every health issue, I end up, if I dig deep, I keep digging all the way down to stress. And so it keeps
Mm.
showing up that way too. And I'm like, okay, well, then we have to solve for this stress. We can't just wish it wasn't there. We can't, even I get stressed sometimes. But what am I going to do to help my body recover from stress and master it versus being overcome by it, right? And having the waves crashing down on us over and over.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point about the pandemic. Like, I think, well, at least one learning for me was like, you're just kind of busy with your life, but when so much of that was taken away, like so much social
Yeah.
support and contact, I was like, wow, I really need that for my mental
Yeah.
health. Like, so yeah,
Yeah.
stuff that we kind of took for granted, we started to appreciate. Or the flip side was like some people who are never home were like, wow, it's actually really lovely to be home and resting and not going a mile a minute, right? Or not traveling to conferences all the time like you and I were.
I mean, that's what happened to me. For 20 years, I had three different office locations, and so I was constantly driving to
Oh
a
my
different office
gosh.
location. And when the pandemic happened, it was like, okay, this is, and I actually, just prior to that, I kind of remember wishing that I could change my schedule. I don't know if other people
Mm.
felt that too. Like, okay, I've been doing this a long time. Could this be different? Could I not be commuting all the time? And then it kind of happened. And at first it was stressful. Imagine, like, how can being home be stressful? But it was, because anytime we experience change, even if it's a positive change, like even if we have a baby, right? You're a mom too. we have a baby, it's a positive thing, but it's also a stress we're going through. And sometimes we, as moms and women, think we're not supposed to feel stressed, right? We think, oh, I'm supposed to be able to withstand this, get through it no matter what, and I'm supposed to be feeling my best. But actually, no, like, we're humans too. We're going to get affected by stress, even if it's a positive change, like not having to commute anymore. And so I then had to kind of shift my perspective on it and go, okay, this is a chance for me to do something different with my time. And that's actually when I started writing this book, actually, is because it was like, okay, I'm not commuting, let me write the book. And so I could shift it, but I think that's the key, is like, how do we, when things happen in our existence and we're like fighting against it, why is this happening to me, this is not what I want. But if we kind of just sit with it and go, oh, this is reality, how can I embrace it and shift and now accept it and move forward? And so I address some of this in the book too, because I think it's important to understand the different kinds of stresses we're exposed to. It's helpful to understand how we can gain perspective on ourselves and our stress and how to navigate it. But I also get into how exactly is stress affecting us in terms of hormones and digestion and right and all of that.
Yeah, because the book's called Manage Your Stress, Reset Your Health. So I want to ask about the health piece, but I want to ask a little bit more about how you define stress, because you've given a few examples, like in functional medicine. Sometimes we put a lot in that stress bucket, which can be fine, right? Environmental toxins, gut infections.
Yeah.
Do you consider all that stress, or is this book more about emotional stress?
I consider all of that as part of stress. And I think it's even like mold toxins, for example, which is, what you've been focusing on a lot recently with your new book, is mold toxins are, to me, an example of a stress, because it has an effect on our body, right? It's going to trigger stress responses in our bodies, and we're going to need to adapt and recover from it. Just like other toxins, whether it's from pesticides or metals. And the same thing with, sometimes the stress comes in the form of just not getting enough sleep, or from even too much of a good thing, I say. Like, even if we over exercise, here we are exercising thinking it's good for us, but if we overdo it or over intense, it's going to trigger a stress response. So just starting to realize, like, anything that we get exposed to that triggers a stress response, what we need is an equal amount of stress recovery. And so I'm trying to shift the emphasis and say, okay, yes, these stresses are here, but how do we make sure we have enough stress recovery to equal it out, to help our bodies recover?
I really like that. It's very simple, and it's like you can kind of wrap your head around it. Well, I'll share, because I just wrote a book, and that's all like a lot of work, and then it's kind of exciting when you're putting it out. And then I was like, tired and frankly kind of depressed and didn't really know what was going on. And it took me a while to realize like what it was. And I think it's kind of like what you said, like all the time and effort I put in, it's almost like I need the same amount opposite now to just be like lack of focus, having fun, chilling out, sleeping in.
Exactly.
So thank you.
Yes, I think we need to start to give ourselves that, because otherwise we're expecting that we're supposed to be able to get through something stressful and not have the recovery or the support to get through, to recover from it. I mean, I was running for example, a live workshop the week before last. Every so often I do a live workshop for helping women with HPV, and in the midst of it, I'm like, this is a lot for me, because it's extra hours and extra time and extra coordination, just like launching a book, right? Or any other project that someone might have, right? Someone else be like, I'm planning a wedding, or I have this birthday party, or I have a project at work, right? There's so many examples of planning events or planning projects, and we're in the midst of it going, how am I going to get through this? And then we get to the end of it, and our body tells us, like, it's like we crash, right? It's like, why am I so tired? Why am I feeling more emotional or stressed or anxious? Why am I irritable? And then but I'm encourage you to go, wait a minute. It makes sense if you don't feel good. You just pushed yourself through a stress. You need some at least equal amount of stress recovery time. Sometimes I use the example of like a marathon runner, right? Like I was talking with our friend Alan Christensen, who actually does train for marathons, and I was like saying to him, like, when it's a marathon runner, we expect they're going to need recovery time. Like we expect they're not going to train every day. We expect they're going to need to eat and get water during the marathon. But for those of us who are doing our own marathon every day of being a parent or a business owner, or you know what I mean, this basically
When is
like
it? Yeah, it's
but we
true.
need breaks too.
Yeah, it's true. We need little breaks. And then I think there's big life events where we need like bigger breaks. And yeah, even some of them are happy, like having a baby. I was just chatting with my friend yesterday, and we were both pretty recently divorced. And I'm just like, man, it just is so long to like
Yeah,
get over it. And there's really no
yeah,
way to speed it up. But it kind of makes sense, even the same analogy. It's like you were married a long time.
yeah.
Divorce is a very taxing process. Of course, it's
It
going to
really
take a
is.
long time. It's not like every day is bad, but I'm just surprised sometimes. I'm like, I thought we were done with this. But here it is again. And I
I
think just allowing that, right?
it is. It's a grief process because any relationship, even if it's a, what I've learned is even if it's a relationship that we're in some ways happy for the change, we can feel happy for a change and we can feel sad for the loss at the same time. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I think we just need to allow ourselves to know, like, I can enjoy the shift and the change and the positive changes in my life, and at the same time be grieving the losses of what's different or what I hoped was going to be. I also, by the way, just had a relationship end 5 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and though I've been also in this process of grieving a relationship while also welcoming whatever my life is going to be going forward, right? And how do we to recognize that we can hold space for both things at once and allow ourselves to cry. One thing this past year I've been working a lot with a shaman, and one of the things that really came clear to me working with a shaman is that there's things that our body has built-in ability to do that we sometimes suppress, like crying. We're
Mm-hmm.
told don't cry, or if you're crying there's something wrong, but actually crying is a process that our bodies know how to do and do. If we're crying and we feel sad, that it makes sense, right? Like look, I think if we don't allow those emotional processes and those tears to happen, then it's almost like we're holding ourselves in a holding pattern instead of allowing the stress to process and be able to shift into something else. And there's a lot of our body processes that we just if we just even the stress response, for example, the stress response is our built-in body pattern. Instead of fighting against it and expecting that we're not going to feel stressed, we need to go, oh, I'm human, I have a stress response, it makes sense I'm going to have a stress response. Let me now figure out what I need to do to support myself. Almost like if it was a child or an animal, we're much more likely to give them support, right? It's much easier. Like if we saw a dog, because I know you're a dog lover like me, if we saw a dog who was we observed that they were experiencing stress, we would be like, what does it need? We're going to pet it. We're going to give it food, right? It's like we're going to be there for the animal, and yet we're not always there like that for ourselves.
It's true. When
And
we feel something uncomfortable, we want to push it away and judge it or say, why am I still feeling this way? Yeah. And you think of like a toddler, they're like throwing a fit, and then 5 minutes later, they're happy. Like, not that we're toddlers anymore, but it's like that's kind of just
yeah,
natural expression, and that lets them keep moving. And I think that's something I'm trying to learn is like, not reject my own feelings, and also that duality like you talked about. I think that's a very, I don't know, sophisticated or wise thing to know once you get older is like,
yeah,
you can completely love your kid and also be ready for a break, or you can be like you said, grieving your divorce even though it's like for the best in your. So I think I'm trying better to like not fight the things I don't like and just like let that duality exist. Because I think now that I've gone through mold, gone through a divorce, I realize like anytime I'm like stuck and
yeah,
fighting something, which you could call a stress response.
Yes.
I know like that's not sustainable for me. Like it takes a lot of energy. Like it's very draining. It's very consuming. So when
Yeah.
I see I'm in that now, I don't always right away know how to shift out, but I'm like starting to recognize at the minimum, and we'll talk about health in a minute, this is not going to work for my health. I cannot stay, you know, like you had a breakup, and if you were like every day just staring at your phone, did he text me? Like that's not going to work. It's not going to
Yeah.
work. You got to
Well,
shift, right?
well, and it's in some. So what I in the book, what I in this book, by the way, is based on my experiences with stress in my life too, and based on working with thousands of patients over 22 years, and just I feel so grateful to have had the chance to have people sharing stories like what you're sharing, like and to be there myself too, and say, what do we do when we're having these ruminating thoughts, and we're like, how do I get out of this? So in the book, I call that stress mode, or what sometimes we think of like a survival mode, like where the cortisol and adrenaline might be responding. That's the stress hormones, right? So when we have a stress, sometimes we feel immediately the adrenaline, where it's like your heart's racing and your mind is racing and you're sweating and you're like feel like your body's ready to react to something stressful, but you're just sitting there on your living room couch and you're like, why am I having an adrenaline reaction while I'm just sitting here? Or sometimes it's that the cortisol is too high or too low, and it's sending these, it's throwing off our thinking and our mood. It's throwing off our digestion. It's throwing off our hormones. And so it's like, okay, we can see that the cortisol and adrenaline starts to get thrown off track, and that also perpetuates some of the symptoms. So sometimes it helps, like in the moment. Sorry, my nose is tickly. In the moment, when we're having these stressful moments, to just, I think, like, is like you're like, it's so beautiful how you're saying you're having more awareness for it, where you just go, okay, let me take a breath and just be with this feeling. I'm in a stress response mode. My adrenaline and cortisol is probably responding right now. Let me breathe through it, and because it's gonna go in a wave. It's probably gonna go up and it's gonna hit a peak, and then it's gonna ride back down the other side of the wave. So sometimes if we just know that, we can be like, okay, let me ride this wave. That's helped me a lot, by the way, in this some of my recent stresses. I'm like, okay, this is like a wave in the ocean, right? Just let me ride the wave and know this is my body doing its normal process. And then when I come down the other side of the wave, now I can go more into problem solving mode. But the other key piece that I hear you talking about is being gentle with yourself. Like, right? Because as soon as we're going through this wave of stress, the critical voice decides to jump in, and it just perpetuates the stress, right? Like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. What's wrong with me, right? All these critical thoughts. So we have to go, okay, critical voice, I see you. You can sit over there, and I'm going to focus on helping myself get through this stress wave.
Yeah, and something else you said made me think of another idea is like, well, I notice myself, like when I'm feeling having an uncomfortable feeling, I go into problem solving mode quickly.
Yes.
Because I don't want to feel it, right? So I'm like, I have to solve this external situation that maybe has no real solution, but I'm like, and that's so, yeah. I like how you said, just have the feeling, let it be a wave, like just be with yourself. And then maybe later you could try to see if there's a solution or what to do, like have that pause. So yeah, I'm guilty of that. I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? Who goes into problem solving.
Believe me, the only way I figure this out is by experiencing it myself, and into how do you create this? Because sometimes when the stress comes on, it takes over so fast that we feel like we don't even have time to make a plan. We're just in it, and to recognize, like, sometimes it just comes on that fast. But the more you have awareness for it, then you can slow it down a little bit, and you can create that space where you can kind of go, oh, I can tell this is the kind of situation where it's going to come on. Let me start to think about how can I kind of do what maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to excuse myself from this situation. Maybe I need to, you know, figure out how I can get a break, or do I need to eat, or, right? Like we can come up with these strategies of in the moment, what can I do when I start to feel that stress response happening? And then what I find, and this is what patients report back to me, is that as we identify your stress type, so this is another key piece from the Master Your Stress book,
Oh, okay.
is that what I find is, because I do measuring cortisol and adrenaline and neurotransmitter levels on thousands of patients, so I'm always looking for patterns, and on myself, and I look for patterns, and I saw that stress response doesn't look the same for all of us. And so the treatment for it is going to be different too. We need to know your specific stress type, meaning your specific stress response pattern, in order to know your specific stress recovery process, right? Like it needs to match up. If we're giving you treatment based on a different stress type than what yours is, it's not going to work well. Right? We're giving you treatment based on somebody else's pattern. It makes sense. It's like, how's that going to work? It'd be like if you know, when I'm thinking of blood type, if we give the person the wrong blood for their blood type, it's not going to go well. You know, like it's that clear. If we give you the wrong treatment for your stress type, you're not going to feel better. You might feel worse. So we want to know, what is your stress type? What is your body doing when you're in a stress mode? Is your cortisol going high, or is your cortisol going low? Or is your adrenaline going high, or is your adrenaline going low? Because this changes the treatment in terms of even the herbs and nutrients that we would recommend. So say a person tends toward high cortisol and high adrenaline, both, which is what I in the book call the stress magnet, you know, because what happens is when we tend toward high cortisol and high adrenaline, we actually are drawn to stress. We almost are like magnets to it. We keep choosing it because we're so used to it that we keep coming back to this high cortisol and adrenaline. What we're going to want to use is we're going to use herbs that help lower cortisol, right? Like ashwagandha and magnolia root and phosphatidylserine, because they're going to help bring the cortisol down when it's too high. And if the adrenaline's too high, we're going to use magnesium, like magnesium 3 and 8, to bring the adrenaline down. But if a person if they have low cortisol, low adrenaline, which is what I call the blah and blue type. I tend to be the blonde blue type, by the way. And this is after measuring my levels over 20 some years. I tend to show up as this blah and blue. I need a completely different set of herbs and nutrients. So it's like, and if I took the ones for the stress magnet, it's not going to help me. It might even make things worse. So that's why, to me, it's like, I really want people to know that it's that important to know your stress type, so you can have the right recovery tools to help you get back out of it. Because what can happen is, when we get your cortisol and adrenaline to optimal levels instead of too high or too low, what if they're just optimal? Now you're less likely to even have these stress moments, right?
Wow, that's nice.
Right? To imagine, like, okay, you might still have stress in your life, but you're going to be able to be like, oh, okay, I'm having stress. I know which nutrients to take. I know which herbs to take. I know how to keep myself able to work with it, versus having it overcome you and, you know, sending you spiraling into these ruminated thoughts, right? So it's about, how do we help set you up for success?
Yeah, I think finding that sort of neutral, like Zen point, and like the longer you can stay in that is what I found is like, then when I go out, I'm like, oh, and I can see it and come back. But yeah, when I was like going through mold and stuff, and I was in that more stress magnet phase, it was like, you know, I didn't hardly know how to come down from it. So I think it's so great what you said, that it's customized. I'm excited to get the book in the mail and read more, because I think people do hear about, oh, I heard about ashwagandha, I heard about melatonin, it didn't work for me, and then they feel disappointed. Well, there is a little more to it than that, and it's great to have books like this as a resource, or work with Dr. Doni as a resource with some of this testing. So let's just take one of the types, maybe the stress magnet type, and talk about some of the physical symptoms that she may see if she's going through that.
Well, I want to point out that, like, because we know the mold toxins are an additional stress, it's also messing with your cortisol and adrenaline levels on top of all the other stress in your life. So it's just like this, snowball effect. And I think that's why mold becomes such an issue, is because it's just a snowball on top of everything else. It's causing more leaky gut. Stress already causes leaky gut. Mold causes more leaky gut. So it just, and then
it's the worst. Yeah. I mean, and I think I might have mentioned to you, we interviewed a couple of times, like when I learned what it does to your brain and the different areas of your brain, I'm like,
yeah.
Well, no wonder. Like I would hear like a door slam and I'd jump, or someone would be arguing in front of me and I'd be like, and now I get it. Yeah. So I'm glad you do consider those stresses as stress. And also I think this emotional piece and the managing the hormones piece is so important as well, because it's not, kind of what I'm hearing is like we have a type, but we can manage our type is kind of what you're saying, right?
So the idea is, yeah, and I was hesitant at first. I'm like, because I really don't want people to be identified with their type in order to stay there. I want you to know your stress type so that you know how to resolve it, how to get out of your stress type, how to become this resilient, happy, healthy, thriving, you know what I mean? I'm hesitant to even say the word happy, because it's okay to be sad too. But it's like how to be in your life, being resilient, experiencing your emotions, and doing what you love. Let's get to that. And then the stress type just helps you, if and when your stress is overwhelming you, you know how to get back out of it again. And
Okay.
So the symptoms you were asking about, I mean, this is an interesting thing too, is that sometimes the symptoms overlap a lot. So a person who has, say, a stress magnet, like high cortisol, high adrenaline, they actually sometimes also have fatigue. Even though a lot of times they have more energy and they're getting a lot of done, they still sometimes have fatigue. They can also have depression with high cortisol. You can have depression and fatigue with low cortisol. So it's sometimes it's tricky to, I had to really work hard to figure out how to figure out these symptoms to really understand these stress types. And in the book there is a questionnaire based on 5 areas that I look at, symptom areas. I look at energy levels, and like, how's your energy, not just in the morning, but all day and at night. How is your energy? Do you have a lot of energy? Do you have low energy all day? Do you have low energy some parts of the day? So it's, understanding how your energy levels are fluctuating. It's also looking at mood. So is there low mood? Is there anxious mood? Is, what's happening with your mood? I also look at focus. Like, is there brain fog? Or are you very focused, or are you getting distracted with your tasks? We also want to look at sleep patterns. What's happening with the sleep? Are you falling asleep? Are you waking up in the night? I don't know. We also want to look at the other symptoms in your body, from pain to digestion to even weight, body weight, and skin. We look at what is your body telling you about how you're responding to stress. And so this can give us information to identify your stress type. Even if we don't have the cortisol adrenaline levels, I'm also making it an online. Now that I have the quiz developed, it's coming out as an online quiz, so you could do it on the. Yeah, and then now, because in the book, once you know your stress type, I guide you through the stress recovery and what I call self-care, based on your stress type. Because here's the thing is, it's not just even the herbs and nutrients are different based on your stress type. It's also that your diet and your recovery activities might be different based on your stress type. So when I say self-care, I mean, I use it as an acronym. So the C in care is for clean eating, A is for adequate sleep, R is for recovery activities, and E is for exercise. And so we know we want to have, these are like these foundational things that I know you talk about too, right? It's like, how do we address our diet? And that could be slightly different for each person. Where are you working on dropping inflammation and cleaning up your diet? Sleep, how's your sleep? Does it need attention? Recovery activities. This is in the book. I have a whole menu of recovery activities, everything from some you might guess, like meditation and yoga, to listening to music and dancing. Like, I looked at all the research on all these recovery activities, and then I looked at the research and said, how are these recovery activities different based on a person's stress type? Should they be different time of day, different duration,
Mm.
based on if your cortisol is high or low, and at different times of day? You see what I mean? So, and then the E is for exercise. So that too, we need to, like, we want to have these foundational activities, this foundational care, self-care happening to help us with our both our stress recovery and our stress resilience.
Yeah, I'm excited to get the book and read about my type. I think that's a great resource for everyone, just to kind of know your type, and no matter how many years you have left on this planet, like have that as a resource. So I just put in the I don't know, tag or whatever here the link. So if you're saying if they buy the book on Amazon, I'm assuming, or where other places too.
Yes, the book is from the publishing company, so a lot of booksellers have it. But you know, most people a lot of times think of Amazon, so you can definitely go to Amazon. The book is the Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health, and under my name, Doni Wilson. And when you order the book, come to the drdoni.com self-care /self-care, because then I would love for you to sign up for the live self-care reset. So starting on Monday, May 2nd, we're doing a live reset, because I really want to help people understand their stress type and how to use care or self care to really help them recover from stress, get out of that stress mode and into resiliency mode, and how to keep it that way.
Yeah, I love the live event. Like, this is my first book and we were trying to figure it out, and I said, "Oh, how about a book club?" And it's live, and I really like it because, frankly, a lot of us get books, we don't really read them, we don't really act on them. But if you're in the event with Doni, you're more likely to really take it on. And I another thing I noticed with my community is we really has to get to the point where now it's like a lifestyle, right? So there's you're learning it, buying the tools, trying the tools. Now it has to be part of your lifestyle, and that's a process. And the more you support you can have on that process, the more likely you are, I think, to succeed, right?
Absolutely. That's the whole, the whole thing. And this is when we're kind of feeling like that we're all on our own and we're isolated. Believe me, I was suffering in silence with stress for so long. I get it. Like, we feel like we're supposed to be able to feel better, and we're afraid how to share it with someone else. What are they going to think about us? Believe me, I was there. It took me so long to start talking about, hey, stress is causing me pain. I need to start talking about it and figuring it out. And so to be able to be in a community of other people who are also changing this language, right? Changing our norm about stress. I want to really shift. I'm on a mission to change this. Instead of just pushing it under the rug and stressing ourselves out more and feeling alone with it, I want us to be like, no, this is important. I'm important, and I deserve to have support to address this.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm excited to get the book. When I read it and I get my type, I'll start sharing on Instagram, and I'll share what I try. I'm actually curious what herbs you think are going to be the good fit for me. So thank you so much, Doni. It's been so nice to connect with you, and best of luck with the book and your program.
Thank you so much,
Bye,
Bridget. I really
everybody.
appreciate it.
Yeah, see you next week, everyone.